We're going to talk about three things today, and I need like way longer to talk about this, but I'm going to try to condense it into 20 minutes. We're obviously talking about politics, so the high level topics. One, what is Trump 2.0? Because the outlets are now adopting this more like political science analysis framework, or industry word and political analysis. Trump 2.0. What is Trump 2.0? The other thing I want to talk about is how the pro-Palestinian protests are going to change in response to the changing administration in the United States, which I think is actually kind of surprising me a lot more than I thought it would. And then the third topic I want to talk about is what happened in Amsterdam, which doesn't sound good. But I don't necessarily want to litigate the bad behavior. I want to talk about the way that it hit the information systems. And so, look, the first topic, let's talk about Trump 2.0. And actually, I'll probably like share my screen, but you won't be able to see this on TikTok. But basically, Trump 2.0 is shorthand for the second Trump administration. And so you have varying schools of thought. You have analysts that are coming from like what I would consider, from the American perspective, a more liberal internationalist perspective, which is going to expect that U.S. foreign policy is more assertive in issues that are happening around the world, and believes that American assertiveness is the key to peace and stability. So the internationalist perspective is going to be pretty common in the media when it comes to analyzing Trump 2.0. And, you know, I'm not sure what other frameworks people are using to analyze Trump 2.0, but I can hear from the crowds that are like still shocked that Trump won the election and maybe a little nervous or scared or fearful of the next Trump administration. And then there's another crowd that's like super excited about Trump being elected. Both crowds probably are going maybe too far positive or too far negative. Some of the key areas that the conversation on Trump 2.0 will revolve around is how will he handle Taiwan? How will he handle the Middle East? And how will he handle Ukraine? How will he handle Mexico, Europe? And Ian Bremmer, actually, some of you may know Ian Bremmer. He's one of the more famed political risk and geopolitical analysts. But Ian Bremmer is going to write kind of in detail what he thinks is what frames the Trump administration, this next Trump administration. And there's pretty broad consensus, regardless on like which group that you're in, that Trump policy is going to tend towards this idea of American first. Really, American first policies, just based on how the conversation is going, are policies that tend to prefer domestic manufacturing, or kind of re-energizing the industrial base in the United States. So trying to build products more frequently in the United States. Also pushing freeloaders either out of international organizations or multilateral agreements, to align those agreements with what Trump would consider American interest. So, you know, this shakes quite a few people up. And then and who knows what of this is actually possible. But domestically, like another thing that characterizes the Trump administration is this tendency to prioritize national security. And the way that that conversation is being had at the moment is through immigration. So the president elect, who obviously take the seat in January, which is hopefully a peaceful handoff of power, staking like one of his grandest claims, like he went from the wall to let's oust 11 million people from the United States. Maybe it's more than that. And so, like, okay, let's talk about immigration. And we're bouncing all over the place, and we also can't talk about Trump all day, but I'll do another segment for that. So on the immigration front, people have to remember that Donald Trump actually has to follow the same process as every president. So he'll set his agenda for the first 100 days, and hopefully he publishes that, because that we'll be here to analyze it. And in that agenda is going to be some claims about his policy proclamations and whatever prescriptions, his desired approach to immigration. And then what he'll have to do, because immigration is a part of national security and it will require increased spending, which means that somebody's going to have to bring a bill into a committee in the lower chamber of the Congress, so in the House of Representatives. Somebody's going to have to start a committee and bring a bill, a spending bill basically, which will have a whole bunch of other stuff in it, okay? Similar to the process that Biden had to follow for his infrastructure bill at the beginning of his first and only term. We'll have to bring group will have to bring a bill through the lower chamber, which the Republicans look to have a majority in for at least 24 months. And that bill will have to make it all the way through the lower chamber, through a process up to the upper chamber, which is the Senate. Both chambers will have to sign off on this bill, and they'll have to put it on the president's desk. And so from the president's perspective, when it comes to national security, not only will he and the other various institutions and interest groups and lobbying entities that want to prioritize immigration and in national security, not only will he have to sell that to the public and get the buy-in from the public, but then he'll also have to get the buy-in in both chambers of the House and in various other bureaucratic bodies that will be carrying out this supposed like mass deportation. And I think that mass deportation will be similar to the kind of policy reforms that Donald Trump said he was going to bring to Obamacare, which his reforms to Obamacare were nil. So maybe he'll get a little bit further along with some of the immigration reforms. But I think that mass deportation is like very laden with challenges that would bog down even the best president, the most formally trained person. I think the idea of mass deportation is a little unrealistic. When you get to like the international political scene, the America First approach to Europe is basically, hey, all these various European countries are getting benefits from trade agreements and policies and investments that the United States is making to provide security or maybe improve the economy in different ways. And there are a number of European countries that Trump felt weren't paying their fair share. So, there's many different types of European perspectives, but the ones you're going to hear in the news are mostly going to be driven by fear. There's a few vectors of anti-American sentiment in the Middle East in Europe that people forget about. But one of the strongest producers of anti-American sentiment and they have a rich history of producing American sentiment is actually France. And France still has global influence, right? Not nearly at the scale of the United States. But French is spoken in many countries in the Middle East and North Africa. So you can imagine that the French, if they get really frustrated with the Trump 2.0 administration, could be one of the contributors to pushing updated anti-American sentiment through parts of Europe and the Middle East and North Africa. And to date, really, like maybe for a while now, the U.S. has pretty much mostly neglected the continent of Africa, including the crazy war in Sudan, which is about to enter another theater in Central Sudan. So you have this dynamic in Central Sudan where we're moving out of the rainy season. It's about to become dry, and there are pretty strong correlations with intense military operations and dry weather. And then also there's no brakes on the conflict in Sudan, and the various military factions are even responsible for like a very indiscriminate killing of civilians. Thank you, John. So the civil war in Sudan is actually like one of the most significant. It is the most significant conflict on the planet right now. I think there's more than 10 million that are displaced at the moment, and that number's increasing, and that war is about to enter another theater in Central Sudan. So we'll start to see that play out here soon. But I guess the point is, the question to be seen, does Trump have the temperament to deliver in negotiating peace between Russia and Ukraine, right? And then between Israel and various state actors in the Middle East. And honestly, you're going to see, like in the media, you're going to see these like very slanted takes. So people are going to claim that Trump's buddy with Putin, which I'm sorry, but they never talk about the like 7 or 8 sanctions that the Trump administration applied in Russia during 1.0. Maybe they roll back some of the sanctions as part of a peace agreement in 2.0. But we know that the Americans are like not super interested in continuing to send tens of billions of dollars into these proxy wars. You know, the hope is that Trump could potentially use some of his diplomatic relationships, which are very different from the kind of diplomatic sphere of influence that would be available to Biden, which we would call Obama 3.0. So it is a very different international environment that Trump would be operating in 2.0 than Biden in 3.0. These are very different geopolitical environments. That's inarguable. So moving on to protests, Chicago protests, but this will probably also speak to other parts of the country. And I don't even know if I have a picture or anything on the Chicago protests that popped up at the Trump Tower. The media doesn't cover protests for what they actually are. The media covers protests somewhat through like interest groups, and also somewhat through like some desire to maintain public safety, even though like not once the violence breaks out, then they just exacerbate it. But you'll see these headlines that say anti-Trump protests break out. Now, I'm going to tell you, because you've seen the footage and you can see it on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You've seen our footage. We are at a lot of the Palestinian protest in Chicago, which popped up just after October 7th. And they're not anti-Trump protests. They're anti-whoever's in office. So initially, the protests took on a dimension where they were like anti-Biden administration foreign policy, and obviously calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, the U.S. divesting from military aid and financial support in Israel, et cetera, et cetera. Now that Trump's the president-elect, the protest organizations have updated their language. And so now they're much more direct about claiming that the idea of Trump revolves around the notions of white supremacy, bigotry, hatred for ethnic minorities, anti-LGBTQ, racism. So these Palestinian organizations that were already marching, and they're clustered with other organizations too, are incorporating some new language that I think will make the protests look different for the foreseeable future, and maybe it will make them behave a little bit less predictably when Trump begins to implement policies in the Middle East. And so, like, one of the risks that I see with the Trump administration, Trump 2.0, and civil unrest, protest at home here in the United States, Trump has a tendency to speak way too directly to opposition movements, and in a very contentious and condescending manner, which contributes to other factors that exacerbate the intensity of the protests, and also at some point could nudge them over the top to violence, or could contribute to like catalyzing the mobilization of opposition, which would also create a scenario where the protests become violent. So I think, like, beyond all of the political headlines and weak shit analysis that you're seeing out there, I think it's clear that in the international system and domestically in the United States, Trump creates quite a bit more turbulence than a Biden administration. I'm not going to opine on a Harris admin because, well, it didn't happen. But if we look at Trump 1.0 to Obama 3.0, which is Biden, Trump's first administration created or exacerbated some of the more turbulent dynamics in the United States, and I think we'll continue to see that in this next administration. And from some of the analysis that I've been pulling down from like Oxford Analytica or Fiscal Note, or some of the other areas that I pull research down from, the best hope is that Trump is more restrained, maybe is a better communicator 8 years after he started this whole thing, and maybe is better at building coalitions. But there's no record of this in the past, so it's to be seen. But we can assume that it's going to be a more turbulent environment at home and in the international system as Trump seeks to settle in and live up to the delivering on some of the policies that he's called for. Plus, the Trump admin has a very different perspective on the world than the Biden administration, where the Biden administration embedded the Palestinian question into its foreign policy. And what do I mean by the Palestinian question? That's, will there be two states, or will there be a solution that gives the Palestinians full sovereignty? Whereas the Republicans and also Donald Trump, they don't account for the Palestinian question in their foreign policy calculations whatsoever. That there is no Palestinian question in the decision-making matrix of this next Donald Trump 2.0 presidency. So that's a different foreign policy than what you would see from the Biden administration, which I think is hopefully more rational and less ideological in foreign policy and in the international system. And for my own personal political priorities and beliefs, I think it's a good time for America to be more assertive with its own priorities, shred as many of the freeloaders as possible, and take the intense security competition with China much more seriously than it has. So I think it's definitely time to turn up. And then we should be more assertive with getting everyone to the table to end these wars in the Middle East and in with Russia and Ukraine. But I don't think Trump, say they talk about the risk that Trump would just defund the Ukrainian government and stop providing them military support, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that there will be some kind of negotiation that takes place that Obama 3.0 just wasn't able to be credible enough to negotiate. Just in the same way that Biden, his admin was not credible with Netanyahu. You know, there's actually something that is so contentious right now that I want to provide some insight on it, but I'm not sure how it will be received. So maybe we don't do that on the live stream. Because I'm starting to notice like these patterns of manipulation that are happening in the information systems that we're using on a regular basis. Remember how I was saying that one part of pushing your agenda as an executive in a federal government is driving buy-in from the public? Well, a lot of governments use like more manipulative means. People label it as like mis or disinformation. And the Democrats pretend like they don't misinform anybody. It's hilarious. But across the spectrum, there's a broad array of political actors that have an interest in intentionally misinforming people to get the political outcome that they're looking for. So the people, like I said before, are the means to the political actors that want to enact some kind of policy or escalate something to the most pressing matter with the most urgency, because certainly this is the only threat that matters. And so you'll see governments trying to nudge people's preferences or create sympathy for their group. And one thing that I saw was apparently there were some soccer fans that were attacked in Amsterdam, which is very unfortunate. I definitely don't like to see anybody get hurt. And I think the idea was that there were some anti-Semitic rioters that attacked Israeli fans that were at a soccer game in Amsterdam. I don't question that. But what I did notice is that there was like a lot of messaging hitting social media before it was recognized by broader media outlets, and also before there was more significant coverage. And to be honest, I still think the coverage on whatever happened in Amsterdam is unknown. Like the picture is not fully known. So I was looking at this in a sort of like theoretical way. Like why would you, like one thing that happened on Twitter was people said that Netanyahu was sending the IDF to Amsterdam. Now, there's no way that Israel could issue a military order and it doesn't get picked up in the international system. It would get picked up by the most credible outlets. And then also, Israel would be hard-pressed to send their Air Force into European airspace. Like that would be like, you'd need a lot of approvals to do something like that. And also the Netherlands, where Amsterdam is located, is literally where NATO was founded, and it's where NATO's headquartered. So I thought it was really interesting that on social media you hear people saying that Netanyahu's sending the Air Force or military to Amsterdam, because obviously that's not the case. You'd have to coordinate with the United States, NATO, and other parties, including European countries, to be able to fly your military planes in NATO airspace, period. Anyways, and then I saw other people that brought citations forward that said Netanyahu ordered planes. My point is, Netanyahu never associated himself with a formal order for aid or planes, and I don't know how that turned into people saying that Netanyahu ordered the IDF to Amsterdam. That's certainly not the case. But it is confusing how much information gets left out of these videos, and then also how conservative certain outlets are about the language that they're willing to use or the claims that they're willing to make. And there's different reasons for that, but some issues don't fully hit the cycle because the information is too erratic or isn't coming from enough credible sources. So then, for the people that were attacked, obviously, I feel very bad for them, and I hope that nobody dies. Okay, I hope everyone's safe. But it's not just about five or six people or whatever, a gang in Aurora, or the misinformation around a Muslim man killing kids in the UK. It's not just about the event that's happening, but it's the effects of the way that these events are presented to the public that kind of drives this combustion of mass mobilization and political violence that's concerning to me. And a lot of people didn't see the UK riots break out, but they broke out off of a similar structure of information where only like a part of the truth was there, but it was very hard to get details. There wasn't a lot of institutional media or like institutions that were providing context on the issue. And a man killed some children. And then whoever the political entrepreneur was said it was a Muslim man that killed children, and just riots erupted. And I saw this happening with the Aurora gang claims. Because you guys know, y'all know where I'm from. And I promise you, if there was widespread gangs in Aurora, I've got a lot of friends that would handle that real quick. I mean, I talked to one of my guys in South Metro Denver today. But there was a framing where you had some individuals that were carrying guns in an apartment building. And then the claims by the political actors and some of the people that were kind of running with this was that gangs are widespread and taking over Aurora, Colorado. And so when I see that type of information hit the system, and then, Aurora PD is not commenting on it. And I mean, obviously I'm in and out of Colorado all the time. So gangs aren't actually literally taking over Aurora. It would probably be impossible. There's so many guns in South Metro Denver and Aurora. So it'd be impossible for gangs to take over the community. But, maybe there was like an issue with the gangs in one isolated area. And some political entrepreneurs were like, hey, we can tap into some of the existing fears and resentments, some of the existing dynamics that exist in the public to either maybe escalate the issue of immigration as a priority, or an external actor, like a state actor or an external non-state actor, would have an interest in sowing discord or creating disruptions in the domestic society. So maybe that actor, maybe like say a Russian actor or a North Korean actor, a Chinese actor, that actor maybe understands the sentiment here in the United States and understood that framing individuals as Venezuelan gangs that are widespread, could mobilize people or create issues in the political environment that would slow down other priorities. So that is concerning to me when I see like certain kinds of information that are emerging and they're very incomplete thoughts, incomplete videos, incomplete context. But then there are people online that are driving others to react. And, clearly they're tapping into something that's very concerning. It's very sensitive. It's very emotional. So I'm going to bring some more granular analysis on that and show some examples. Go ahead.
I have one that I saw today that is floating around on social media.
Yes.
I think I actually saw Rogan post this. So basically, saw this headline all over: Hamas calls for immediate end to war after Trump election.
What the hell?
And he literally didn't say that at all. And there's a couple places where this is noted, but essentially he was basically calling an end to Israel's aggression against the people, especially in Gaza, and wants the United States to stop blindly supporting Israel. But the headline says that Hamas is calling for an immediate end because of Trump, which is so far from the actual case. So it's crazy. The misinformation that people are posting is absolutely crazy.
It is. And then also the Israel in this situation needs to get more buy-in, not just domestically, right? They have to hold the buy-in down domestically because you don't want your people to try to unseat you or get crazy. Yeah. But they need to get more buy-in in the international system because they don't have a lot of support behind them right now. We know that Trump will be aligned for the most part with Israel, but I do think that Trump's going to push to try to contain our costs and hopefully bring some peace.
Yeah.
But Israel knows how to run large-scale information campaigns, influence campaigns. Probably one of the finest at it. It's just their vectors of soft power have been shut off. So they can't export their influence the same way they could before October 7th because so many societies have kind of turned away from their influence and see them as less credible right now.
Largely so it's important because of how they've handled Gaza, though, right?
Perceptions of how they've handled it, right?
Right.
Without us litigating the war, like it's perceptions that need to be shaped. Okay, we'll end here, but we'll probably have some more stuff to talk about. And it was cool to stream this all over the fucking place.